Okay, welcome back to a panel named Homecoming: Can Diversity Shake Up Music Industry? Our participants are Ilija Milošević from Universal Music Serbia, Antonela Marušić, writer and a journalist, freelancer, Mr. Luka Benčić, musician and journalist, and Domagoj Kučinić in front of Rijeka 2020, who is going to moderate this panel. And I'm going to play an interpreter to Antonela, even though I'm not an interpreter, so wish me luck. This is a special prize for this project, but we'll talk about that later.
First of all, I would like to welcome everybody to this panel. Thank you for coming. Today we're going to talk about diversity in the music industry and ask the question whether diversity policies and strategies can shake up music industry and make it more diverse, egalitarian, accessible to everyone. Concerning the title of this panel, Homecoming, this is a clear reference to Beyoncé's and Netflix 2019 project, where they put out integral footage of her performance in one of the most popular festivals, Coachella, from the previous year. For us here, that performance seems important for two reasons. The first one is that Beyoncé in 2018 was the first Black woman to headline Coachella. To make things more interesting, her performance was a representation of the historical Black colleges and universities and Black experience, with more than 200 orchestra members, dancers, singers, and many others. The performance, some were calling it Black Culture Celebration, was the most streamed performance on YouTube. The second reason is that Homecoming, Coachella, and similar projects are a part of the mainstream music industry in America, which is still under scrutiny for not being inclusive enough. The numbers are grim as well. Dr. Stacy L. Smith published the Inclusion in the Recording Studio report. And to study the gender and race of the industry's core professions, the researchers looked at the 700 top songs on Billboard's year-end Hot 100 chart between 2012 and 2018. Across the three creative roles highlighted in the study, women make up to 21.7% of artists, 12.3% of songwriters, and 2.1% of producers. We have to be aware that this isn't enough and ask question, are Beyoncé performance and similar ones going to make music industry more diverse? Are they going to open doors to women, people of color, LGBTIQ communities, and many more? And what do we have to do here in our own region? Today we're talking with Ilija, Antonela, and Luka. Thank you all for coming. We will start with Ilija. Since you're coming from the core of the music industry, could you tell us more about the industry and recent calls for more diversity and inclusivity in the music industry? What have been your experiences and where are we now with the diversity in the region?
Sorry, what was mine?
What have been your experience and where are we now with the diversity in the region?
Hi everyone. First of all, pleasure being here. Thank you for inviting me. Well, this is a topic, as we all know and expect here to hear what are we going to do about it. I have to position myself at the very beginning that I'm experiencing international music company standards, which is very rare in this region, with actually Universal Music being the only international music company in the whole post-Yugoslavian region. So therefore, you know, with a completely shaken market on a global level, that was happening somewhat 2 decades ago, our goal here since the very beginning, which was 10 years ago, was to start developing this market in a completely new setting and new standards. What happened in the global music industry is technology that actually shifted the previous power pillars, the way it was done, and all the inequalities that it was cherishing before that. So that means that we here didn't have opportunity to fix things, but actually to make them, which is somewhat, yes, challenging, but maybe better position. The thing about big music company like Universal Music Group is that with that diverse catalog, genre, and with that variety of artists that are representing it and actually being represented in somewhere like 77 to 80 territories globally, we must actually include diverse strategies in order to spread this music and, yes, develop our business in the widest possible way and actually make this business sustainable, since it actually changed with the technology that, yes, as I said, changed the values. What happened in last maybe 5 years is that we are witnessing that there are artists that are speaking more of differences, of different different positions, different structures that should be included. And yes, there are voices that are telling that things are shifting, that are shaking up. Mainstream artists like Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, and to name just two of them, because they are changing things. They're also changing this male perspective of the business, which is still a big path to go, a long path to go. Forbes, I think, defined that, for example, it was the latest research that on every man in the industry, every fourth man in the industry, there's one woman. So yes, we have 4 times longer the path now that we will need to go on. But what happens here is that, as I said, the most diverse catalog brings diverse artists. We need to, for that matter, cover all the target groups that are happening and actually develop our audiences, which in our local or regional context makes us do the same as our global company is, which means that in the region we're assigning core classical projects, new classical projects, hip-hop artists, or pop artists, and so on. We have to develop it that way. So yes, my experience is that it's very tough because these are still small audience, and the way to go in that direction is hard. But then again, I think that the whole creative industry the creative industries as a whole here also have a very long path to go when it comes to education of professionals and actually making the standards in this industry, in the region, sustainable and working. It was mentioned on a previous panel about self-exploiting practices and people who are what was the exact sentence, but the ones that cannot pass on their work. My experience here, me included, is that we're all self-educated. There are no proper educational structures to make proper professionals who would understand the basics of the business or the basics of the industry in order to start thinking about diversity and inequalities and all the other issues that, yes, are represented in everyday public sphere. Let's put it like that. So, yes, does this answer your question?
Yeah, we'll continue to talk about it further. Thank you for your insight from inside of the industry, but now we're going to shift to the outskirts and talk with Antonela. You have been active in feminist community for some time now, and now you're working on a documentary about female singer-songwriters in Croatia. Are there any, to quote Judy Butler, gender troubles in the music industry here? And what is the position of women at the music scene at this moment?
I'll read my text in English, because I'm bad in English. Okay. As a journalist, activist, and feminist, I'll talk about growing appearance of female musicians and the change that has been happening in the Croatian music scene last years. I will also refer to sexism in music scene and in media towards both female musicians and female music journalists. As a journalist, first in mainstream media and daily journals, later on feminist portal Vox Femine and other non-profit media, I have watched this scene grow. Female musicians appeared in a Croatian music scene first uncertainly and only in the genre of acoustic singer-songwriter music, but later in the format of music bands. I'm talking about the period from year 2007 and on. In private discussions with them, I noticed different forms of discrimination that they face dealing with club owners, sound technicians, male colleagues in music and media. All of them confronted female musicians with open prejudice, supposing that they could not be original and skilled musicians just because they are women. Women's empowerment has happened in many artistic fields last 2 decades, music included, and the number of female musicians has increased. I believe that the modern race of feminist movement in Southern Eastern Europe had a major influence on them. They become aware of inequality of women in private and public space, and therefore they write different songs and in a different way, more self-confident and self-aware. They are reshaping traditional women's role in music industry. These new performers challenge the traditional role women have in music industry, not necessarily, not only in blunt terms, but propelling strong feminist messages in different layers, in their music, lyrics, on stage behavior, and also in their interviews and messages in media. I'm currently working on a music documentary titled Mogu Sama, I Can Do It Myself, with Croatian production house Paid In. The tagline of the film, I'm not sure if it will feature or mid-length movie, claims that Croatian pop rock music is no longer a world in which men play the main role. For the first time ever, female musicians are involved in large numbers, not only as singers and performers, but also musicians, songwriters, producers, drummers, guitar players, managers, promoters, etc. The main characters of my film are singer-songwriters Nina Romić, Lovely Quincy's, and the members of the bands Paul David Kocabe and Žen. They are not romantic and submissive women on the stage who sing about unhappy love, the ones that we are used to have in Croatian mainstream music. They do not glorify men and masculinity in their songs. They don't try to attract the attention of the public with styling or sexy image. Their attitude is different. They are on their own, impulsive, stubborn, professionally mature and serious. Sometimes even bold when they need to care for themselves. I chose them really because the way they create and promote their music is in line with feminist, queer, and do-it-yourself values. It's true that we can't compare this growth of the female singer-songwriters musical scene with trends such as Riot Girls. Riot Girls had a completely different musical style as well, punk, post-punk, garage, genres in which the message is by default expressed with a shout, powerful riffs, directly, clearly. Here it happens through new narratives, new themes, new ways they position themselves on scene, as well as through the new ways they function within the scene, the ways they discuss and negotiate with the band, write their songs, manage everything, organize tours. They're taking care of everything from booking the concerts to communicating with the media. And even in the media, they're representing a sort of activist message. Women on Croatian independent music scene are tired of being labeled as female musicians. In newspapers, on blogs, social media, websites, radio, television. Even though it starts to gradually disappear from media, discourse is still dominantly present there. Sara Renar, who ditched her career in an architectural bureau to pursue her lifelong dream of making music, is tired of being labeled as female first and musician second. Once she said to me in one interview, too often the media put female musicians under the same level. And all we have in common is that we are women and we play music. But we play different kinds of music. A similar message was declared by a well-known Croatian director Hana Jušić when asked about the increasing number of female directors in Croatian film scene. When journalists asked her some years ago what she had in common with other female colleagues working in the film industry who are exposed to media, she answered that the only thing she had in common with some of them was the fact they all had a cunt. But while some female musicians refuse to acknowledge the fact they are part of a broader social movement, society is changing and the audiences are becoming more assertive. Originality and opposition to social stereotypes attracts a non-conservative and non-superficial audience who consciously chooses music with authenticity and open intimacy. I would say something about documentary. I can do it myself. Me and my team, we worked 4 years on that movie, and currently we have no money in budget. For the last 2 years we have been volunteering, but till now we already have 50 hours of footage, concerts, rehearsals, private gatherings, travels. Currently we are waiting for results of public competition of Croatian radio television for external production. And now you will see a so-called demo trailer of the movie where the protagonists explain their own motives for going on stage. First, Nina Romić talks about her first appearance and phenomenon on female singer-songwriter scene. Then Sara and Eva from Žen band talk about their intimate relationship and discrimination in the music industry. Ana and Martina from the band U pol devet kod Sabe talk about their LGBT identities and how they influenced the public's perception of the band. And in the end, Lovely Quincy's talk about her first solo appearance and single Wrong House and the positive discrimination. Okay.
Okay, we can now take a look at the trailer.
Zora se javlja kao crta daleka, u zagrljaju šume ja je čekam.
Sjećam se svojih početaka gdje sam bila apsolutno sama i prestravljena i malo kasnije bi ja shvatila da sam zapravo sposobna uzeti gitaru i odsvirati neku svoju pjesmu. Onda se počelo nešto događati sa scenom. Sve više i više se pojavljivalo kantautorica koje su stvarno sposobne napisati vrhunsku pjesmu, zauzmu cijeli stage svojom pojavom, svojom energijom.
Riječ žena stavimo u muški rod, dobije se žen i to mi je bila totalno super riječ. I onda je Eva rekla pa kao, nek se band zove tako.
Odmah smo nekako kliknule glazbeno dosta dobro i ne znam, skužili smo se na toj nekoj razini.
Odmah smo se skužili, odmah smo se zbarile i to je to. Koliko traje band, toliko traje i veza, otprilike, -1 dana. Često smo doživljavali to da nas se uopće ne uvažava ili recimo da me pitaju kao, a jel imaš palice? Sad kad mi dođemo na neki klub, mislim da je odmah u prvoj minuti jasno da mi jako dobro znamo šta radimo i šta želimo.
Bilo je tu rasprave o tome da li treba iznositi uopće sad kao smo mi gay band.
Jer je band cijelo vrijeme bio podijeljen na pola. Nisu mogli skužiti zašto sad miješamo glazbu i neki aktivizam. Zašto će U pol devet kod Sabe biti zapamćen band i po čemu je on bitan upravo po tome. Taj način dobiješ jednu publiku, a jedan dio publike nikad nećeš ni dobiti baš zato što si to što jesi.
Ništa,
imala sam samo tu jednu pjesmu i onda me ovako ususla. Kad izbacujem pjesme, to meni osobno mora biti bigger than life. Ja ako imam potrebu da nešto kažem, jer što reći.
Koje daš ovdje?
Žena s gitarom, Isuse, znači živim za taj dan kada će netko napisati muškarac sa gitarom. Ispada kao da smo neka endemska vrsta, čovječja ribica.
I can see you down in the wrong house, in the wrong house.
Thank you for your valuable feminist perspective, and I think I speak for everybody when I say that I'm looking forward for you getting the money and resources to finish this film. Now we're moving on to Luka. You have been playing all around with various bands. What is your experience with the music industry and diversity? And what role do the musicians play in reaching equality and equal representation?
When we talk about gender representation, the truth is there is less female musicians in the bands. The new thing she was talking about is the whole scene of female singer-songwriters. My experience, I played in Bambi Molesters for 8 years. We had a female bass player, which was experience. Lada is appreciated among music community in Croatia, and she's a well-respected musician. And we didn't have experiences of sexism and stuff like that on our gigs and our travels. Maybe on some gigs among the audience, but the thing is, I think musicians, they don't see people as labeled by gender, by race, by where they come from. I don't know. I mean, it's you don't think so?
I think people are like that, not musicians.
You have some positive experience in your band.
Mostly I had positive experiences, yes, so I'm not, from my male perspective, it's not maybe something to talk about. What I can talk about is my experiences as touring musicians who played among the region and among the Europe, and stereotypes and prejudice that musicians from Croatia or from Balkan region can see with European cultural elites and their expectancies. What kind of music should we play? What kind of lyrics should we sing and stuff like that? That is something. The thing is, people from Western Europe mostly expect from bands that come from Balkan to be some kind of ethno bands or world music bands and play some oriental mellows and stuff like that, and to sing about social inequality and transition and war troubles and shit like that. They don't expect this from, for example, Swedish bands or German bands. They can have rock and roll bands, Americana bands, or whatever they want to play, but the expectancies from us, from this region, is to fit in that kind of perspective. The only resort for us from Croatia is something I called genre scene. By that I mean smaller subculture genres like garage rock or punk rock or heavy metal or surf rock in case of Bambi Molesters. which is a very small scene and which is still based on enthusiasm and amateurism, and something that I experienced for 15 or 20 years that I play is this shift that happened in the European music scene from this enthusiasm and amateurism to professionalism. And what happened is cutting the middleman and dealing directly with booking agencies. And for bands from this region is very hard to approach to European booking agencies and promoters and labels. Because when I started to play, it was way different. You could still contact the owner of the venue or some local promoter who likes your music and ask him for a gig, and it's changing. It's changing rapidly. It changed, for example, in London, it changed maybe 7, 8, or 10 years ago, because big companies as HMV or O2 bought all the clubs and they're dealing only with booking agencies. And there are less and less independent venues and independent promoters that you could work with. But this is something maybe good for the bands from USA or from England or from Western Europe, but for us, because we have no infrastructure whatsoever, we don't have labels that are able to operate in this new world and a new kind of dynamics. So we have to learn by ourselves. We have to learn how to self-promote, how things work, how things operate on a European level, and this is the path with a lot of mistakes that we are making, and not the same chances that we have. Because what I would tell, when you start playing the band, your starting point is not the same as starting point of someone else. And if we put it on the scale, I would say plus minus. English or American bands are somewhere on plus 20. That's their starting point. Then you have plus 10, maybe Australia, New Zealand. Then you have around 0 is Germany, Sweden, stuff like that. Then you have minus 10, where are Czech Republic, some former Eastern European countries, even Slovenia, and I would say Croatia is minus 20. So you have to work twice as hard, learn twice as much, just to get at their starting point. And then it's very hard, maybe impossible, to reach the level when you can be a professional musician and work and live just by playing music. So I don't know anybody in Croatia that succeeded to do it on the level that some American or Great Britain or Swedish bands are doing that. I mean, on international level, you can be. The other problem is Croatia is a really small country, which is not very interesting to foreign booking agencies, and we have to fight for every gig. Okay, Zagreb is now on some level, can be compared with some European countries, but whole clubbing infrastructure in Croatia is practically dead. So there is no lot of opportunities for bands that come outside of Zagreb to have some path to make tours, to quit their regular jobs and live just by playing music. So those are some issues that are interesting that I find out interesting on my musical path. How we can change it, I don't know. But I think one of the main problems is there is no cultural policies. for supporting Croatian music whatsoever. The Ministry of Culture does practically nothing. The organizations like Croatian Musical Union or Croatian Society of Composers, they try to do something by subsidies and stuff like that, but it's really minimal compared to some better developed country. For example, I was meeting a lot of bands that come from Sweden, that come from Finland, and their cultural policies compared to ours it's like science fiction. I met a Danish band that were collecting the receipts from the bars and from the lunches because their government is giving the daily fee. In Sweden, the government is financing the bands that go on tour all over Europe. Even commercial bands like The Knife or something like that. On the biggest conference in Austin, South by Southwest, there are policies like Japanese government is giving the government plane to their bands to fly to Austin. Australian government is booking the club for their bands for whole week. Croatia, except for few individual cases like Overflow played there. I think Lovely Quincy's played, or maybe not. So, it's all the results of individual effort and investing your own money in that because it's very expensive. I know when Overflow played South by Southwest, they got, I think, maybe 20,000 kunas from Croatian Composer Society, and it's barely enough to cover up working visas, not to talk about, I don't know, housing, instruments, all the other expenses you have there, and cost of travel. Yeah, cost of travel. So it's almost impossible to work, to operate on that level that bands from all around the world have opportunity to operate. You have to work hard, you have to learn fast, you make a lot of mistakes, and nothing can make sure that you'll succeed. And even if you are successful, because Bambi Molesters were considered as successful band internationally, you have to have regular jobs. You can't live just out of playing, and that kind of success is not near the success of other bands from other parts of the world. So I think the important thing would be to press, to push the government and the Ministry of Culture to establish some kind of policies and to start looking at Croatian music as something that should be promoted, that should be exported. That's the way the other countries look at it, because Croatian music is not recognizable outside of Croatia. It means nothing. Croatian music as a term doesn't mean anything. It's not like Australian music or something like that. Croatian scene is... So the best chance is, as I see, is to connect with the region, to connect with Serbia, Bosnia, and Slovenia, and to start doing something together, because the best opportunity for Croatian musicians is to play among this region, which is what we are doing for 10 or 15 years. Okay, you can ask me.
Thank you. So we did a little diagnose here of the music industry. For me, I think you were talking about Taylor Swift. I don't know, you were mentioning Madonna, Lady Gaga, or someone. You were talking about Paul David Kotsabe, Jen. I mean, that's different. That is mainstream. This is some kind of alternative.
Lady Gaga vs. Paul David Kotsabe.
Do you think there are any differences between inclusivity and diversity within alternative music and mainstream music? from my own perspective, I think alternative music is much more inclusive, but I don't think it necessarily has the access to the mainstream. Could you please reflect on that?
Ja te slušam.
Because of my bad English, my wonderful translator, Srđan Sandić, I will talk.
God help me. Polako govori.
Hrvatska mainstream glazba i hrvatska nezavisna glazba su praktično dva odvojena svijeta.
Croatian mainstream music and Croatian alternative music are completely separate worlds, completely different worlds.
Sa određenim, naravno, tim nekim sivim neutralnim zonama gdje se dodiruju, međutim, to mogu ilustrirati tako što ne moraš tako brzo. To mogu ilustrirati tako, ja sam dugo radila kao novinarka mainstream medija i kada sam dala otkaz i otišla i počela pisati o glazbi u neprofitnim medijima, veliki broj pjevača i pjevačica sa mainstream scene koji su mi poštovali, koji su sa mnom surađivali godinama, pitali su me gdje sam nestala.
For a long period I worked as a journalist in the mainstream medias, and I was working with a lot of mainstream, of course, artists who were satisfied with my work. They were satisfied. And then when I moved to NGO medias, non-profit medias, they actually asked me when they would see me in a city, where did I disappear? So they obviously didn't know that those medias exist.
Da, ja sam praktički vođena kao mrtva, nestala novinarka koja više ne radi, ne bavi se ničim.
They thought that I'm a dead journalist who doesn't do anything anymore, and that I'm obviously physically dead too.
Ilustrirat ću to sa jednim primjerom, ovo tvoje pitanje koje je vezan za queer bandu Pol 9 kod Sabe.
I will illustrate this with a good example with the mentioned band Pol 9 kod Sabe, which is a queer lesbian band.
U Pol 9...
Pa dobro, ali je.
What?
Rekao sam da je queer lesbian band.
Interesantno. Nju sam tako. Oni su, Pol 9 kod Sabe su jedini regionalni queer pop band i zvuče doista slušljivo. Trebale bi ih voljeti radio postaje, trebao bi ih mainstream voljeti. I mainstream ih na neki način vole, međutim, kad god se približe malo preblizu tom mainstreamu, kad god dođu u neku poziciju da obzirom na minuli rad dobiju neku nagradu i budu uvažavani, tu ih se zaustavi i vrlo se često njihove pjesme, one najeksplicitnije lezbijske pjesme, ne puštaju u programima hrvatskih radiopostaja, što smo dobili po izlistima.
Pol 9 kod Sabe is a original queer band that sometimes comes to the mainstream points, to the mainstream centers, for instance on the radio or television, and then at some point they get awards, but they never really come into the mainstream.
But explicit lesbian songs are not played on radios, is that what you said?
Nije. Yeah? Oh, well, what a spot. Okay, but the explicit lesbian songs have never been played on the radio, for instance.
Njihova najpoznatija pjesma koju mainstream stvarno prihvatio je Starim, u kojoj se zapravo ne akcentuira lezbijski odnos.
Their most famous song, which is called We Are Getting Old, is the most famous song in the mainstream because it's not explicit when it comes to lesbian themes, topics.
Kada sam istraživajući cijeli taj slučaj, budući sam njihova prijateljica i baš me zanimalo i kao novinarku zašto se to događa, razgovarala sam s nekim ljudima na Hrvatskoj radioteleviziji i na Hrvatskom radiju. Oni su mi u tom trenutku prije 2 godine rekli da se boje da ne izgube posao na Hrvatskom radiju.
When I was trying to do the journalistic research to find out what's happening, why are they not played and why is this song the most played one, they told me on the Croatian National Radio that they're afraid that they are going to be fired if they play those songs.
Jer kao što znamo, neokonzervativna revolucija u Hrvatskoj i u medijima je vrlo prisutna i novi su urednici postavljeni prije nekoliko godina promjenom vlasti, dolaskom HDZ-a na vlasti.
Okay, so as we know, neoconservative revolution is ongoing here in Croatia, and the editors, especially on the Croatian national television, have been removed, changed. I mean, that's a regular experience on our Croatian national television, but they're working on their politics, so they have to ignore this kind of artists.
I da na kraju zaključim, dolazimo do svih tih pitanja. Neće ih vrtiti ili će ih vrtiti manje. Ako ih vrte manje, zarađivat će manje od ZAMP-a, bit će manje prisutni u mediji.
So, to make a point, if they're not played, they won't earn any money, so they won't be recognized, so nobody will call them. So it's basically the end of their careers. I'm giving some interpretation to your words. I'm not an interpreter.
Ilija, would you reflect on the relationship between mainstream and, let's say, alternative music, globally and regionally?
Globally is a completely different picture, because it's global. And yes, the artists that are provoking enough, interesting enough, or talented enough, have the opportunity to use their voice to actually initiate stories, initiate good examples of inclusion, to communicate with the audiences that way. But they need to have hundreds of thousands of people listening to them, going to their concerts all around the world to actually make a point. In this region, like you said, mainstream and alternative, it's two different worlds. But the thing is that alternative is not just, there is no alternative pop. There is no alternative mainstream. You don't have these fine differences between genre that will actually have wider audiences, and people wouldn't be then afraid to overcome these kind of ridiculous and very old-fashioned yeah. So mainstream in Croatia, for example, is completely different than mainstream in Serbia and Bosnia. Or it's just not talked about, because people are not listening to folk music in Croatia, as far as I know. Even though it's 80% of the people going out, actually listening and consuming the music, which digital services are proving. So, and in Serbia, or Bosnia, all around the region, basically, this kind of new pop genre is what it is, what's mainstream. And there's no space for these kind of messages or inclusivity or any kind of real socially important questions that one might ask themselves when they're listening to music. It's all about money, which, yes, it's important in a region even more so. But I think it all comes up to, yes, education and giving people some kind of know-how on how things should be done. Because if this journalist, if it's a journalist or a worker in a public institution, would be the second one in the world who actually changed would do their job, because it's their job. If you work on a radio, it's your job to listen to what audience feels and to present to the audiences what current music is or what your listeners are interested in. But it happened, it mutated. So now in our region, basically, editors on radio stations are gods. And it's usually the songs that either their friend or themselves wrote, and then it's on high rotation, and then it's, because that's the way it works. Once we only had one radio station, it was like that, okay. But yes, there were different cultural policies in these countries, and we had, as this big country, we had a very, very functional music industry. Up until 1991, I think. But now we switched that, and now it's all about individuals, and if they have enough power in these male-dominated boards, then of course they will, be more successful. So it's tough, But it would be good to actually have some regional superstars that are in different genre than alternative rock, pop, or any like kind of. I wouldn't judge the quality of this music. Promote this kind of idea, because I think it would work.
You and Luka mentioned education. Who do you think is responsible for that education? Does the musician and all the industry has to do it by themselves, or is it something that the whole society must learn and be taught?
I think that education is something we should do all together, and musicians and labels and promoters and booking agencies, and it's done for past maybe 6 or 7 years. It gets better in Croatia. There is more experience among the bands, among the promoters, and it's better chances for bands that are starting now than when I was starting doing music in the 90s, because we knew nothing. But
that's still not official. Or this is more people getting more and more experienced and learning.
That's something that's exchange of experience. But officially, I don't know. I really have no idea.
There's no management in music industry in this whole region. There are not specialized courses. People don't know what copyright is, for example. And you expect artists to know, and then you have a label dude telling you that your copyright is not really your copyright anymore, which is not even close to international standards, because that's the old way that industry was led in this gap that we had, with, of course, all the economic reasons that we had in the whole region and still have. So I think governments, yes, that's the first thing that should go, or having talks like this and put it on a little bit higher level. If students of production on film academies would have a half-year course on music industry and how to actually put up a music video up on Vevo, maybe the things would change. But there is no initiative of that kind. My personal experience is that when I started, we're a small company here because we're working on different standards. So one by one of my younger colleagues that were joining my team, they were all learning from me or from themselves or from the artists that they were talking to, and it was in all this informal kind of way. Now they are professionals, and yes, should I teach on the faculty? I might need to. Oh wait, I didn't finish my my studies because I started working and developing this kind of thing. So that kind of a cultural policies should bring the structure that will support artists, that will support, because music industry is there is a variety of fields there. You have artists and creative people, you have managers, you have legal, you have all the sorts. You have other producers, content producers when it comes to any kind of creative content. So yes, it's a very flourishing industry and should be cherished in that way. But I think that with strategies that are still implemented here in that way, that there's a journalist who would say, I might lose my job if I don't promote, if I don't put out a song that people might actually be interested in, just because it's a lesbian themed. Then okay, why are you stopping with Lady Gaga is the mainstream super top hit, and she has Born This Way, and talking about gays and lesbians and everyone, and that is on the mainstream media. What's the difference? Oh wait, we're not understanding this language, or we don't have that in our yard. So
not in our yard.
I'm not sure about the importance of radio and national television in promotion of music, because
it's not about promotion. I'm talking about actually the sustainability of artists' careers, because that's the pillar.
I agree.
Money from actually broadcast.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if alternative bands should even try to operate in this mainstream world. For me, it's more important to establish sustainable alternative world where you can operate. For example, a lot of bands that I was influenced by are bands that are playing all over Europe or USA for 200, 300, 500 people who are willing to pay, I don't know, 20 euros for your show. And if it's your goal to play for, I don't know, 300 to 500 people, to have a crowd in every city in Europe, that's something you have to go towards, not to be new Lady Gaga or new, I don't know who, Toni Cetinski, I don't know who is mainstream even in Croatia. So since I started to be a musician, people who are outside of music always have this same trope, like, okay, so you don't play stadiums, you don't play crowds of 10,000 people, and they don't understand that I don't want to play. It was not my goal from the beginning, and people, sometimes these transitions from alternative to mainstream happen, but it's in the world, globally, it's very rare. It's something that happened to R.E.M., but it didn't happen to Dream Syndicate or all those Paisley underground bands from the 80s, or John Sand, or all those bands who still play. So it is something that is statistically very small margin. So I don't think the goal should be for alternative music to go into mainstream, to be on the national television or something like that. That's
it shouldn't be underground, should stay underground. I agree with you, but without mainstream setup, you won't be able to actually live of your music. The whole system needs to change in order to underground stay.
I was thinking about sustainable alternative setup.
Now, with all the technology changes, and actually here in the region having all the services available and all the tools, like anyone else around the world, yes, that is a way. But then you would have more audiences. There is a way to get your music promoted in a niche kind of way, which should stay as a choice of artists and the choice of audience. But then again, you know, if on top of that, there is no difference, then we're all alternative. We as a major label, the biggest music company in the world, are also here considered as alternative. Our catalog is alternative. Because
it's a very thin line.
Who would be interested in contemporary piano music in this region? Well, we are. And there is, you know, it's a long run, so it will be successful and sustainable within 5 years, maybe, if we manage to do it properly.
Yeah, well, that was always the case, that major labels have some alternative bands on their roster, but
well, we have a lot of alternative bands.
It didn't work well for many of those bands.
I think that's a little bit old-fashioned thinking as well.
Okay, guys, Antonela was trying to say something.
Ja ću samo uključiti malo u tu priču tako što ću izložiti jednu vrstu dvojbe koja vlada na nezavisnoj glazbenoj sceni.
I have a doubt that is going on the alternative music scene in Croatia.
Gdje se neću referirati samo na ovaj ženski dio, nego uopće generalno na možda regionalnu ili hrvatsku više.
I won't refer only to this female part, but I will refer to regional context.
Znači, vlada dvojba da li da se uključimo u nekakvu borbu sa strukturama hrvatskog društva skladatelja, da hrvatska nezavisna scena i bendovi dobiju neki svoj prostor tamo, neki svoj novac i da dobiju prvi put infrastrukturu, ili da ostane se dalje pri ovom nekakvom odnosu gađenja, svega toga i pokušaju građenja paralelnih institucija.
We're thinking if we should start to fight conversation with the Society of Composers in Croatia, we as alternative bands, alternative musicians, and try to find a way to get the money as they are getting it, but...
Tako, mislim, to nije urodilo nikakvim plodom. Zapravo se radi ta paralelna priča. Ja nisam, recimo, osobno podržavatelj te priče, jer smatram da se treba, neću reći rušiti HDS, da se treba ozbiljno preustrojiti HDS, da se treba raspustiti, potpuno tu nagradu utemeljiti na drugim načelima i konačno početi graditi nekakvu drugačiju priču od toga. Da bi se to počelo, trebalo bi se stvarno nekako doći u taj HDZ i početi, ta generacija početi preuzimati te položaje. To je jedini način da se ljudi poput Paola Svecija, koji je učinio, neki smatraju jako puno stvari, a neki smatraju jako puno zla, da bismo se riješili te nomenklature.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I can do it. I don't think it's necessarily that we should, destroy the society, the company of Society of Composers, but maybe to get inside and reconfigure the system. Maybe the name, I don't know the name, can you repeat the name? Pavle Sveci is not the worst guy ever. You said that, right?
No, many say that he did some good things, but he also did a lot of evil.
Okay.
He was, in the 90s, he was chasing the bands who played with Serbian bands in Slovenia and then called the clubs to ban them shows.
I remember that.
Najveći nacionalist Hrvatske unije.
He was the biggest nationalist of...
Yeah, so we talked about things that we can, I think, mutually agree on, but I see them mostly as the symptoms of something more deeper. I mean, in our society, we still believe that women shouldn't play some instruments. What's with that story? We did an Akalvi concert few months ago. Everybody was super surprised that she plays the guitar, asking us, is she the only one? Are there any... Is that a media problem, or?
Everybody problem. Ja vidim te ljude u publici na koncertu Ane Kalvi, neke čak i svoje prijatelje kako, rašireni hoću gledaju Anu Kalvi s gitaru.
Sometimes I see the public, and even though some of them are my friends, and they are pretty much amazed when they see a female group on stage.
Daću primjer Sare Ercegović iz grupe Žen. To smo je vidjeli.
I will give another example of Sara Ercegović from group Zen. Žen, band Zen.
Ona je bubnjarka i kvir je, naravno, autala se u lokalnim hrvatskim medijima.
She's queer, she did her outing in Croatian medias.
I to je, znači, dvostruka nekakva diskriminacija. Znači, ona je queer bandu i svira bubnjeve.
She's double discriminated. She's obviously a queer person playing in a lesbian band, queer band, and also playing drums.
Naravno, ona je dovoljno ponosna i hrabra nju takve stvari uopće.
She's very brave and proud, and she doesn't care about the reception of the public.
No, kad jedna djevojčica iz njezinog mjesta, iz Dugog Rata u Omišu, svojim roditeljima rekla da želi svirati bubnjeve.
But when one little girl from her small town where she was born said to her parents that she wants also to play drums,
roditelji su joj zabranili i rekli nećeš biti ona lezba kao Sara Ercegović, nema bubnjeva.
Parents forbid her and told her that she won't be that lesbian Sara Ercegović they know. So
beri gitaru ili klavijaturu.
They told her to choose a guitar or a piano.
Kad bi samo.
And after all of this, say.
So you mentioned media. I think that absolutely is the responsibility of media. Serbian media landscape is a horror. So, when you go out on the newsstand, the only thing you can see is sexist, fascist shit all around. And not to mention TV and all that. So it's a little bit, I think, a different situation here. But it's what people want. That's the main problem. It's not anymore that it was only pushed to them. It's what people want and watch. So if there was no higher instance set cultural policy to prevent these kind of content to be pushed to all these people that way and that freely, because they're completely free to do whatever they want. there will still be, you know, these would be the values that these people would protect in the end. So we talking here is, yes, one way of public intervention, but it must come from the system as a whole.
Yeah, and except of education, what are the other strategies? Is like 50% festival billing the solution? What do you think about that?
Yes, but it's also, I don't know what data you have, but I don't think yes, that is a solution. I mean, our team here is 50-50 equal male-female region. Our code of conduct on a company level, global company level, is protecting these kind of equalities. But that is in professional or on this side of industry. On artist side of industry, yes, that kind of a fight is necessary, but also artists have to understand that it's not about valuing this only your own creative force and everything. It's actually putting your money where your mouth is. I think that's the wording. So you always have to push for very strict standards if you want to set them. So that's what we advise all of our artists here. That, you know, if you do value your art and your time, then look up to others that are actually valuing that, because the promoter that is paying you as a woman 5 times less than a superstar DJ that comes there and acts the way they usually act, then there's a difference. But still, you as an artist need to stand for yourself. And that's very hard, because there is no other support that they would feel safe about it. What I mentioned also, what I wanted to mention before, when you were talking about, you know, the way things are changing, the trust is something that is very, very important. I think that artists lost trust in the industry as such, because you need to fight for your own, you need to answer all the emails, you need to set your own fee, you need to then lower your fee for 50% because you're a woman and they don't want to pay you that much. And, you know, but for that matter, you need to surround yourself. It would be great if all the artists could surround themselves with people they can trust, so they can join forces and be united front of this. And I think that artists should talk to each other about this. And yes, make unions. Yes, in some parts of creative industry, there are unions. Film crews in Serbia.
Why not? Why not?
They all have standard pricings. So you wouldn't find a cameraman doing for a lower per diem than the other. Some have higher, but there's at least a low limit. So yes, if you're a local band on a local festival, you shouldn't allow that you would be 50 times less paid than the international act, who is, by the way, getting on top of that everything else that the promoter can give them, because we're still scared that, you know, if we're not, you know, supporting and cherishing and actually pleasing all the international artists, that in the end, you know, oh my God, they won't come, and then the next festival I won't be having this kind of you know, money, or I will just lose my whole business. But then again, and then artists sit on their probably delayed sound check on the festival, and then drinking their one beer that they got on a coupon, and they're sitting there and.
Yeah, I think the problem is here in Croatia is problem that the artist agreed to a shift that happened for past 4 or 5 years. It's that this bunch of festivals, summer festivals organized by tourist organization, craft beer festivals and stuff like that, that is destroying the scene, destroying the community, destroying the club infrastructure, because all the money goes to that events which are free. So artists who play for free on some summer festival can't play.
Yes,
but we all agreed on that kind of policy, because you play for free on some summer festival and then you want to charge money for next gig in the winter. So the clubs are disappearing with exception of Zagreb. So you can play no more anywhere in Croatia beside maybe in Rijeka in few venues, Split maybe one place, Šibenik one place, and that's it. It used to be a club almost in every town in Croatia with local promoters which are enthusiasts, which love your music and call you to play and get some money to pay you. And now because of this, Croatia is a tourist country, so every tourist organization in every village is paying some guy to do a festival, to establish something like that, and beer industry with craft beer and this hipster bullshit going on behind all that is destroying
You're really angry.
What is okay. The community? I don't know. That's my point of view.
I agree. I think we'll just, here under or dug out all the problems that are in the music industry as such. But I think that's the thing that we started off, or I did as well. You need to have a structure in order to start thinking about why is everyone outside the Balkans thinking that we're so exotic that we need to play gypsy music, like you said.
Yeah. So
Balkan music is just like, ooh, that's so exotic.
Culture
shock.
Shock.
You're from Romania. Wow, that's even more so. But before...
Kusturica, brass bands.
Yes, of course. I mean, that promoted...
Dubiosa collective, fuck the government.
And that's working. That's working, but not all of it is the same. But we need to think about that as well. With moves like, yes, play that lesbian track. Play it on the radio and see what happens. Maybe a lesbian will hire you next. Maybe you're a future manager of this band because you play their song.
Well, there's also this issue with the mainstream alternative because something that is played on national radios, even local radios, it's not showing the popularity of a certain band or singer at all. Because there were cases that bands that are on the radio day and night couldn't sell 50 tickets here in Rijeka when they do the show and stuff like that. Because I don't know, I can't name nobody who gets his or her information about music from the radio. I don't know, playing Radio Rijeka, for example, and so, okay, this is a great new band. People who love music, who go to gigs, get their information elsewhere.
Somewhere else, yeah.
Somewhere else, yeah.
Especially when we're talking about alternative.
Especially.
To music, yeah.
I mean, mainstream in the region are on digital. They're also not there that much on the radio. But still, radio exists and radio pays for music. That's the important thing.
Yeah, you mentioned digitalization and everything and technology a few times. Can you please reflect on that much more? What did the new technology bring to diversity? Did it?
Well, the opportunity to promote your music and to push the music and to develop your audience. So, if you're a solo artist with a very special message that you want to define yourself as a diverse artist in certain group or whatever, then you actually have the opportunity to initiate this kind of process. Yes, there's no guarantee for any of creative people know that, any of the artists in any field, that your art will be so exceptional that it's instantly there. So, yes, but the initial position is there because now in the region you have all the services, hopefully getting even more every day. Laws are being, in a way, set up step by step. So there is some kind of ground base, and then one should be only brave, of course. But that's how things work in alternative scenes anyway. The thing is that now you have even more opportunities about that. And what important thing is that if you're any kind of artist, you need to understand that everywhere around that, on all of these digital services, all of this media, there is some money that is your money If someone is taking, and money is important because that's the only way that you can actually wake up in the morning, have your breakfast and go to the studio. Or wait, I need money for the studio as well. So you need to have this circle there. Yes, that's capitalism. Yes, that's the moment that we live in now. But so for that matter, that's also part of some kind of know-how that artists should listen from people they trust. Maybe you can trust me. That there are ways, and there are ways, and there is your piece of that cake. And now you have even more opportunities about that because it's not as if YouTube is not paying to anyone. No, YouTube and Google now pay musicians. So this is not only a promotional tool as it was 10 years ago for all the alternative artists. I want to have my album on YouTube, all of it.
Yeah, but there's a huge disproportion between...
YouTube is a very special thing. We're not going to
and platforms like Bandcamp.
Platforms like Bandcamp, Deezer, Spotify, whatever. You can actually make some money out of that and secure your position as any kind of artist. And of course, there is an audience for everyone.
Yeah, but when you talk about Spotify, the money that artists get from platforms like that are peanuts compared to what are labels and music industry.
That depends on your deal. But then I think it's a topic for another panel.
Long panel.
I think
it is like that. But
David Byrne wrote the article, I don't know in which newspapers, and he calculated how much money did I think Daft Punk get from one song, and it was $20,000 or something.
No, it is, but that's the technology changing the whole industry.
For 60 or 100 million. Listening.
To put it very simple, the product came from 20 euros to €1. So that's what destroyed the industry. So now it's just different standards. But still, if that's the only money that you have, then use it. Or understand that it's there. Same as with radios and ways of promotion. And
I agree, but that's not something the artist can depend on YouTube and...
They should depend
on money from YouTube.
Full circle, I think.
Full circle.
I agree. Full circle. Yes, on governmental money, on funding, independent funding, EU projects, whatever we can actually use, because that's how you make things. There is no other way. We can,
Thank you. So if anybody has something to add, better do it now. Okay, so I'll open Q&A section. If anybody has some questions, please raise your hand and I will bring you the microphone.
It's not really a question, but a suggestion for Antonela. Have you heard for the band Luminize? They're a all four-piece, all-female band from Crikvenica, and they're
signed to Universal.
Yeah, they're signed. Yeah, it's very easy to get them. So I think they should be in your movie, nevertheless.
My movie is already done with protagonists. Protagonists are four, no more protagonists. Maybe.
Yeah, okay, but they are. Yeah, okay.
Maybe part two. Maybe it's become serious.
Okay. And another question. Can I get two questions?
In second season.
Another question for Luka about, and maybe for Ilija too, for education of the musicians and promoters and all that. How do you think that is possible to implement, and what's the interest of the all participants? Because I know for a fact that Udruga RiRock was having every year some kind of workshops on the subject, and the response was not very good. So what's the problem there?
Maybe it's the problem of communication. Maybe people just don't know or think they don't need it. But I think that any kind of workshops are good and necessary especially for the young bands that are starting their careers, because there's a bunch of information now you can find anywhere on internet, but you need some kind of structure, you need some kind of experience, and that's the thing that you can get with this kind of education you're talking about. Still, this is informal education, and it should be brought on some higher level, maybe with government money or stuff like that. But I think the main issue is the government or Ministry of Culture or whoever have to decide, okay, is music industry, is music scene important to our country? And if it is, what can we do to make it better, to make it function, and to make it be presentable across our borders? So the stuff, if NGOs like RiHub or, I don't know, other organizations which try to work with musicians or producers or anybody who's in the music could get more money, and it could then have effect on presentation, on communication, on advertising, on everything. So I think the government should fund more initiatives like this to build some kind of structure that can be.
I might have an answer. I mean, what I saw, that bands or artists are usually in need of some things when this need already is spilled over. You know, when you realize that for the last 5 years you're answering emails, you don't have a manager, there's no booking agent, there's no, there's no room. Oh my God, the building was trashed in my studio, is not even there anymore. And then they go to these kind of workshops and learn new things. That's the whole. It's a 2-year course. So if actually official educational institutions include this part of creative industry in their programs, I think then you would have young people which will lead this industry in future. It's not even about me. No, I'm in this business for the last 20 years. I'm an old dude for that. So if you have an 18-year-old, 19-year-old knowing that there is a school that they can go to, that they can learn about things, that they should actually be introduced to all the bits and pieces of this industry, then it will be functional. Otherwise, these workshops, they're useful because people understand things, so then there's a friend of a friend who becomes a manager and knows a little bit more, and then they share experience, and that's how their self-education works. It is moving,
like building a community.
Ja bih dodala samo jednu stvar na ovo što Ilija kaže. Imamo recimo situaciju da je curama iz grupe žen dosadilo svađati se sa ton majstorima, jesu li one dovoljno mature da bi same sebe ozvučile, i one su, jedna od njih je već 2 godine se zapravo bavi sound engineeringom i educira se za to i vrlo skoro će biti gotova s tim i radit će to sama.
I have an example from this band mentioned already, Jean. The girl is fighting with a...
Eva.
With, what's the word for that? Sound engineer. He was claiming that she doesn't know how to do it, and now she got her education and she's now doing it by herself.
Yes.
Zato što imamo jako mali broj ton majstorica žena. To je možda jedan...
There are no females in that business in Croatia, at least.
There's one in Serbia.
Ja ne znam jednu u Hrvatskoj. Nek mi netko kaže, ja ću intervjuirati sad. Okay.
Super, imamo 2 u regiji.
Odlično. Excellent.
But that is an issue. That is an issue to get back on the topic. It is. Because it's still, oh, look at her. It's not about only that. If you have in any kind of in performing arts or in entertainment in general, what happens when you're having a drag queen party in a club that's not usually welcoming that kind of program, because it's part of the official festival and all that. There's always a guy, there's always someone who would be louder than everyone else that will actually make them soundtrack not even function. And the thing is, in the end, it won't sound good. So, it's everyone's responsibility now.
Hi everybody, I'm Nela. First of all, thank you all for the great discussion. Actually, I was, brainstorming with myself the whole time, and I wanted to comment almost on every sentence. So I would like to, refer to like the general view of all the problems. Of course, we could say that minority groups, transparency, all the legal policies and so on could be the problem. But in the end, in every segment that you touched, I saw the, capitalism as the main problem, because Luka was mentioning the festivals that are in the end marketing for the beers or burgers or whatever, and it's a legitimate marketing tool, so who can say they can't use it? Ilija also mentioned the record deals that are maybe before record labels were taking a part of the fee from the artists. Now maybe Spotify or YouTube are taking your part, but you and your own music can reach to the people that was never ever possible like nowadays. So in the end, we need to admit that if there is a public, there is money and there is you. So if you're a great artist, you will find your public. Ministry of Culture won't save you. We know about the policies. We have maybe 1%, 1.5% that Ministry of Culture is giving for the whole culture, not only for music. And obviously, we should have more money from the Ministry of Culture, but obviously that's not the way. So I think that the market is unfortunately dictating this thing. And to finish with the 50-50 rule or the initiative for the women DJs on at least European scene, everybody says, okay, we have a lot of women in music industry, but not a lot of women DJs. We know that maybe most of the people could say, I'm talking about the top mainstream artists. Most of the people, if you ask them, what's the famous, I don't know, some techno DJ, everybody will say Nina Kravitz and Nikki Bellucci. The first one, because, okay, she's good, and second one, because she showed her tits 10 years ago. But nevertheless, I think that still the problem is, and people say that if public is not educated, obviously women are not empowered to enter the industry, and maybe we don't have enough women DJs at the moment to cover a real 50-50 lineup on the major festivals. And to finish with Ilija probably referring to Exit Festival, about not paying the local artists as much, maybe. No, I'm just talking about the not paying the local artists because
International festivals in general.
Yeah, but in Croatia, for example, I never heard that local artists complained about their fees, because in the end, if that's also the market thing. If they're not big enough to play anywhere else outside of Croatia for bigger fee, they won't be paid on the festivals. So yeah, that's it.
That is the point, but then again, you should also understand your lineup. So if you have a very big local artist who's bigger than the other international artists, you should at least give him a better slot. But just a comment on your first thought that you shared. Yes, I think that artists didn't change. So if your music, if your art is good, it will find a way. But what we need to take in account, because yes, capitalism, yes, that's what's happening now, that's the world we're living now. And these are the circumstances we can play in also, in order to survive, live our life, whatever. There is a way to change it. But that's also another topic. But the thing is that, yes, artists might, they didn't change. I don't think they changed it, but audience changed. The way they're consuming music changed. The way they're finding out about new music also changed. I would really like to get back on radios and editors and hosts who would tell me, oh, this is a new track of this and that, and then I'm amazed. But it's not like that anymore. So I think that yes, audience is a majority in this process. 80% of this whole process depends on them, and they live capitalism. So
I need to refer just to the radio. At the time when with u pol 9 kod Sabe were at their top, I worked for the radio station 101 in Zagreb. We were playing them a lot, and Radio Student played them a lot. Yamat is still playing them a lot. They had a lot of interviews in a lot of media, not only regarding gender equality in Vox Femine. They also had a lot of interviews in Jutarnji List and elsewhere. And I know that Goran on the HRT radio, the second program also playing them a lot. So we can't count, of course, on the commercial, I don't know, RTL television, Nova TV or others, but if they reach to the public and for some...
Not enough. I'm insider, believe me.
I think we should count on all the commercial media, because otherwise it's going to be all reality shows all around. And that's the majority of also the audience that we're targeting, no matter what genre you're in.
Yeah, but why? Why should anybody want to be on RTL? I don't know.
I think RTL should change if RTL is the case.
If you play...
Luka wants money, but not being on RTL.
I mean, we are talking about better conditions for everyone here, not only about queer independent alternative scene. That's the thing. Because the reason why we're on this panel is because it's not working working on a major scale. Like I said, Forbes had recent research. Every 4 men in the industry, there's only 1 more woman. So to start from that, you know, that also happens on HRT, RTL, and everywhere else, which is mainstream media.
Speaking of 101, radio 101 i Pogledaj kod Sabe, to se dogodilo nakon mog višemjesečnog truda i kontakta sa ženom koja je radila tu listu i tada smo uspjeli s tom pjesmom. Ta pjesma je bila dosta neutralna.
Okay. Wait.
Sorry.
I'm not that smart. So when you mentioned the Radio 101, that was the effect of my constant contacting editor to actually play that concrete song.
Njezinoj dobrovolji.
In her goodwill. And so we made it, but after a few months.
But it was a neutral song.
It was a neutral song, yeah. Wow.
We have one more question here.
Gentlemen.
You got all your questions.
Any more questions? I don't see any hands in the air.
Okay, I have a question now. So you're constantly, all 3 of you, talking about education, probably thinking on self-education and education through internet, because you can't obviously influence the school system, especially not in a region where it's becoming very...
We can't. I think the reason why we're talking about this issue now is that we might actually could do something.
Yeah, but you have to do it through a party. You can't do it like sitting on a conference in Rijeka. You have to, go deeply into politics to change the educational system, because education is everything. It's where the stereotypes are based and why nation exists, especially in Croatia. There, it starts there and then it goes to media. And in media, I'm talking about all Croatian original medias are very much fascistic medias, and that's the base of their nature. And then they sometimes become open to topics like LGBT pride, which happens once in a year, or if somebody...
Open doors.
Or days of open doors, or blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so what's the education? Like, let's think that again, how to educate a taste when it's manipulated for 30 years already, especially in Serbia, where it was a programmatic thing to do, to come with the folk music. And now people really act like they want that because they're educated to want that. I mean, how to educate the taste?
By giving it any kind of choice. Because if you're a kid in school, yes, of course you're gonna go where everyone else is going and listen to that kind of music. Seriously, no judging. It's everyone's taste. That's all fine. But there should be a choice. Lala at the very beginning actually mentioned that these kind of initiatives and talking about inequalities and diversity are more visible in the private sector, because all of them have this CSR tool. From my point of view, we being a corporate, I can offer that I will release all the music videos that on the second year of film directing school people should make.
Let's promote one and done. For example, so I think that small initiatives could work, and also because it's all about money. People in education would, there's always someone who would, push for that kind of progressive program that would maybe open up things. So, there should be initiative. That's why I don't think that this is like we won't change things because we're talking here. This is also part of education. I suppose that some of you heard something new today about where we stand in this industry. So, I think that by education, I mean, first of all, if we talk about young artists, I think young folks should be encouraged through school system to play, to express themselves through music, to choose whatever music they like, whatever music they feel comfortable with, and to have a place where they can find the answers. As he said, RiHub, what is doing here in Rijeka, with very specific issues you're dealing with when you're starting your band, when you try to put a tour, and everything else, if you talk about taste and stuff like that, it will come naturally when things start functioning on this lower level, when you're 16-year-old and want to have a band, to have all the encouragement from the society, from the school system, from your family, to make it work if you want. To encourage, I think young artists need to be encouraged to go out and play, not to think about, okay, I have to have a, I don't know, job, I have to have security, I have to have something like that. Those are all mistakes I made in my 20s because I always thought, okay, it's not going to work, it's never going to work if I just try to play. So it was always something that I didn't put enough effort in. But I think it can change, and it is changing, and it is encouraging because a lot of young bands these days are touring, are playing Europe, are doing amazing stuff, and having their own path, and it's a nice thing, it's a nice moment to live in, because all this diversity of music that is all around us, and we can enjoy it by one click on YouTube or go to gigs. In the 90s, there was no gigs in Rijeka. Last night there were operators playing, some Canadian band in the 90s. When I was starting playing, it was like SF to have some American band playing in my hometown. So the times are changing and good things happening, and we are behind Europe and developed countries, but we can do something. We should build all the people that participate in the music industry. I think the important thing is to develop to create some kind of community, to exchange experience, and out of that, good things can happen. Education can happen out of that. RiHub is an example of that, because that is something that was that grew up from music community in Rijeka. So that's my point of view.
Što se tiče edukacije, i da se ja nastavim i završim, trebamo građanski odgoj koji zaslužujemo, pa ćemo i onda o ovim temama...
We need a civic education first, and then we'll come to arts.
I onda ćemo doći do toga da i publika, i proizvođači, i mediji, i sve te generacije aktera koje sam spominjala razumiju što znači zaista rodna ravnopravnost i raznolikost. Kada budemo imali...
Only with that kind of education we'll be able to have public, parents, kids, teachers who will understand what diversity, what gender politics really means, and then it will influence eventually art and taste.
To će se dogoditi za nekih 60 godina. Vidimo...
It will happen in 60 years, so see you then if we survive.
Okay, in 6 years, thank you for coming. You have a round of applause for our speakers.